All right. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me for another great video. I'm here with two people that are just amazing. Like the life experience that they have gone through in the military is just they're here, and it's great for us to listen to them and hear their story as we talk about what's happening not only in Fort Hood, but in the military in general. We represent two different branches, but a span of about 30 years of service. So tonight I'm gonna let them do their own introduction. So we're gonna start with Queen Mother Betty. I know you remember seeing her. We met at the rest stop in Arizona when I was just driving across country, and we just happened to click, and we have stayed in contact. So Miss Betty, if you can introduce yourself and your service as well.
Okay, I'm Betty Porter. I came up with a Google name, which I can't figure out how to do yet, but Godmother Ninth Power, because nine is our number. And I'm a veteran, Vietnam era veteran, mother, divorcee, what else can I say? That's all you want me to say for right now. And then everybody's going to introduce themselves, right?
What branch of service were you in?
Oh, Army. Army.
Army. Okay. And what years were you active?
Uh, 73 to 76.
Okay, great. And I just want to say thank you so much. It's such an honor to have you here, and that you
I'm
are
old.
willing to share your story. This is not for me. It's for our black sisters who are in right now, future
Uh,
who are thinking about it. This is that time where school has ended and the recruiters are out there. And so this will be an unapologetic truth of what you're getting into. And this leads us to Brother Kareem. Kareem, I gotta give him a little bit. Kareem, I've mentioned you. He's also a moderator here on my channel. He is a great brother, jazz musician. I've known him pretty much my entire adult life. He is the godfather to my son. Just a great brother
oh,
to look up to. And we served together on the Truman. But your time in the military is unique. So I'm gonna let you have the floor to introduce yourself.
All right. My name is Kareem Gideon. I'm a former petty officer in the United States Navy. I served. I did two separate enlistments. My initial enlistment was between '97 and '01. That's the years I graduated high school, and I got back in
mm,
around 2003 to 2009. I served on three aircraft carriers. I decommed the USS Independence. I crossed the deck over to the USS Kitty Hawk, and then I served on the Truman,
wow.
the USS Truman. I also did what is known as an individual augmentee tour in Afghanistan for 4 months, and then I served my last year and a half on a Marine Corps base in Japan. Was stationed totally in Japan for about 4.5 years, and I spent the rest of the remaining time I was in Norfolk. I've done numerous underway deployments. I've I've seen the horrors of what it's like to be black
Mm,
in the military, and black.
yeah.
y- You know, I see. I've seen a lot of bad things happen over the years. So I hopefully I can give a little bit of insight to what we've seen recently at Fort Hood, and also concerning Laverne Johnson.
Mm,
I was she was killed in 2005. So I was in we was me and Tieesha was in, and that was the biggest
yeah.
story going around during that
Mm,
time. This female soldier,
mm.
Mister, died, and everyone said it's suicide, and it wasn't. And
No,
these
it
are things
wasn't.
that
Mm-mm,
and these are things
mm-mm.
that I hopefully we can discuss today.
So thank you so much, and shout out to everybody who is watching this video, and shout out to everybody who will watch the replay. Make sure you share this with someone. This is a video that you want to get your teenager involved in, or anybody who is in who
Yeah.
has questions. If you have a situation that you're going through, you have
Yeah.
these two right here. Me, I was in for 5 years. I served Navy from 2003 to 2008. And the story about our sister LaVena Johnson, she just popped on my mind today. And as I was reading about the incidents that's occurring in Fort Hood. And the person I immediately go to whenever I find something military is Kareem. And then, I just remember Queen Mother Betty. I sent it to her as well. But we can start talking about our sister LaVena Johnson now. We can go ahead and start talking about her. Me and her joined the military at the same time in 2003. And and she was her death 2 years later while she was in Iraq was ruled a suicide. But however, she has parents, her father, Dr. John, and her mother, Linda, they have, sought the truth. They have went as far as, demanding the autopsy, exhuming her body, answering questions. And the one thing that I saw, I have a link in the description for the documentary, The Silent Truth, and I shared that with Kareem and Queen Mother Betty today as I was watching it. And what I gather, it appeared as though they saw her as just some disposable Black girl in the army. But no, her father served, I think he said 25 years. He has a brother that is, a professor of criminal science, so she was just not some disposable Black girl. She had she has parents, she has a family that loves her, and they pursued this all the way to Washington to demand an official investigation on the truth of her murder, or I'm going to say alleged murder, but it's obvious that, I have a law enforcement background, but we all three sitting right here have common sense than anybody else who is watching her incident. This was a murder. So can y'all tell a little bit about your reaction and what you felt as you were watching The Silent Truth, or what happened, or your initial thoughts when you heard about this story?
For me, it was when I originally heard about it. It the way the story went during that time was a black female soldier committed suicide on base. That's how the news at the time portrayed it, and even on base, that's usually when things like this happen. The military goes up a little uproar, and they have us do safety stands out, just talk about military, talk about suicide awareness and things like that. But when years went, and I didn't think nothing of it because it became a passing story. It was just like, okay, it's in the news. I think a few months later, Katrina hit. So Katrina was the big news of the day. And I got a whole story about that, that whole debacle.
I was out to sea with you.
You was out to sea with us when that happened. And then years later, when I heard about her father, I saw the interview with Rock Newman, and Rock Newman and her father and her lawyer was talking about how the Army nothing seemed right. And we all know that the military likes to close ranks and likes to not do anything that's going to discredit or put the military in a negative light. And unfortunately, what happened to her, as we now know all the facts, the circumstances, is an all too common problem in the military. This is unfortunately a part of the culture of the military. We now know that she was sexually assaulted, she was raped. We all know from the autopsy report and from ballistics that it's theoretically impossible for her. She was 5'1" to shoot herself with an M16 rifle. And if you ever shot an M16 rifle, that if at point blank range is going to put a hole in your head. And
man,
I know Miss Betty has a lot of stories about shooting that gun. That gun is heavy.
Yes, it is. Like it's nothing like the commercial rifles. Like me, I have a SIG M400.
Yeah.
that is a feather compared to the
Yeah,
military rifle. That joker will get you buff, you know.
yeah. We used when I was in Afghanistan. We used M4s. So
Mm-hmm.
M4s was the lighter version of the M16.
Mm-hmm.
So from there, when you start listening,
Mhm.
the more we dig in and the more we investigate, things don't add up.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, you're realizing the one common denominator is where she was stationed was Fort Hood, Texas. And a few years after that incident, we know there was a Muslim psychiatrist that did a mass shooting there
Mm-hmm.
back, I believe, in '08 or '09. You have to check the date on that, but it was around that time.
Right.
And he went on a mass shooting spree. He killed soldiers in the base hospital, and they tried to claim it as he was going to extremist sites. He was going to um sites catered to Al Qaeda and ISIS and all of that. And if you really dig around, since he was a psychiatrist, he probably was privy to a lot of information from these soldiers, and it probably was told to, even though these individuals have mental issues, they suffer from PTSD or depression or bipolar or whatever, clear them from duty.
Oh God! Oh, you're in the show. I can see you,
So,
but they can't hear me.
um, okay, I can hear you on my end, Miss Betty.
Oh,
We can hear you, Miss Betty. We can hear you. I'm gonna call her, okay?
Okay,
okay, I got it. I hear you.
okay, she got
I
it.
hear you.
Okay, great.
Um, and it also coincides some of my experiences, of
My
how
turn.
um
Is it my turn?
Hang on 1 second.
Okay.
I know you want to get in on this. Go right ahead. Go ahead, Miss Betty.
Go
I ain't
ahead.
going nowhere.
Yes, go right ahead. Can you tell us what you thought when you heard the story of our fallen sister, LaVena Johnson?
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Can
Yes.
you hear me, brother?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine.
Can you hear me, brother?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine.
Can you
Give
hear
her a
me?
thumbs up.
Oh, okay. Ooh-wee. It's like everything you said. Uh, Personally, I don't think no female need to go into a commanding officer or anybody over her.
Mm-hmm.
No private meetings at all. I think it should be just like a doctor's office. You need to take somebody in there with you. Too many times, higher ranking officers, they're away from their wives,
Mm-hmm.
their girlfriends, their hoes, and they just want to have a good time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. They ain't trying to fall in love. They just want to have a good time. Thank God I never had to go through that. But I've known other women that
Mm-hmm.
went through that was afraid to say no because he had power over her. Men that have power over somebody and he's loose, he got a few screws loose. And these mamas letting their sons go in the military knowing damn well he already had problems in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Straighten up your problems before you go into the military. The military is a dumping ground for mental health issue people. They wait until you get more damage put on you, get out,
Mm-hmm.
and homelessness, drug addiction, suicides, stealing. I mean, just everything. The problem should be nipped in the bud. They're just letting people in, and they know that they got a problem. They're looking for numbers. The
Exactly.
expendables. That's what we
Yes.
were. We was just
Expendable.
expendables.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so glad that you gave a lot of details about your career. I usually don't talk about mine. It's hard to talk about mine and what I did in life because I don't want Al Qaeda's to kidnap me, you know, because they know I know some things and I've had to do some things and show us how they make these missiles, show us how they make these bombs. I don't like to talk about publicly. I'll talk privately to y'all and tell y'all everything I did, you know, but it's like a lot of things I just don't say publicly because I don't want nobody kidnapping me trying to find out the secrets, you know. And plus, most people don't think of a female as a veteran, you know.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, ma'am.
I salute you. Like, you know, it's you were there before we were born. So thank you for what you did. And you know, I don't.
Oh, thanks for making me feel old.
No, like you still look. Miss Betty look good. Okay, when I saw her, she just got a haircut. She had locks down to her butt, not a single gray hair.
Oh.
Now. We applaud you and we praise you. So thank you. Like you are an elder. You know, we talk about the difference between elders. Older is just folks that got old, you know, but you are definitely an elder because you have a story and you're sharing your wisdom and you did constructive things and you're doing constructive things for us. Like you just don't know how many, you know, people who are, you know, on the fence about, well, the recruiter told me this versus what is really going to happen.
Oh, they lied.
The both of y'all are here too. Tell me about that. Just about everybody has a story about how the recruiter lied, but you know, it's their job to sell a product and they sold the product. So in the movie Silent Truth, Silent Truth, it talked about that. It was like it showed a poster of Uncle Sam, and it's like 1 in 3 women will be raped in the military. You know? Can you talk about that? Because there was obvious evidence that our sister LaVena Johnson was sexually assaulted, and you know, can y'all touch on that?
Can I go first?
Yeah, go ahead. I was going to let you go ahead. Go first.
Can I go first?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, she was. I know deep in my heart she was. But guess what? They don't tell you this part. A lot of men have been raped too in the service. Because they told me personally. And it's harder for a man to admit that another man, but he was tricked into it. They used trickery. You know, get him drunk. You know, it's harder for a man to admit that because, you know, we're built kind of a little different.
Yeah.
Other than the physical aspect. But I thought, oh my God, did you ever, Betty, they said, you don't tell nobody nothing like that. And he was my age. And all these years, he raised a family. His wife didn't even know.
Yeah.
You know, and he's been holding this stuff in him all these years up until 4 years ago. He went to the psychiatrist at the VA hospital and told him. Now, I think his life would have been a little bit better if he had released that stuff a little bit sooner. You know, I thought, I said, why would you tell me that? I don't know. You were just easy to talk to. And I know you don't blab your mouth. You know how to keep secrets. You know, it's like the military like you to keep secrets. They don't want you telling them anything. But before I stop talking here, I just want to say one more thing about this subject. I think that if the person doesn't have a family member that was in the military, they can sit them down and talk. I had my uncle. He was alive for 28, 29 years. And he was my surrogate father. So I flew the bases when I was coming up, you know, in the summer. And he filled me on in everything. Everything, the good, bad, and the ugly. You make up your mind after that. I think they need to do young people like that. They really need to sit them down, let them talk to a female or male and get a real good picture of what you walking into. Because basically we're killers. They train us to be killers.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to be trained to be a killer and not let that bother you, If you got a strong enough constitution, you're gonna be trained to be a killer. Can you dig it?
Yep.
That's it.
For me, it was the best. I call the recruiters used car salesmen. That's they'll lie to
I can't
you.
hear you.
They'll call
I can't hear him.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Kareem.
All right. Well, I'm gonna just go ahead and talk
Yes.
and I describe recruiters as used car salesmen. Their job is to sell you on the idea of a 277-year-old bucket, an idea. So they'll use every means possible to convince you to join. For me, they used the idea of me joining the Navy, joining the military band. So when I originally joined, I joined what was known as undesignated airmen, which meant that what the other branches refer to as the open enlistment, which meant that I went through a 4-week school and then I just went to the fleet. And it was at the whim of personnel what division I was going to go, what work center I was going to go into.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I looked up, I guess you could say lucky that I drew V4 division on an aircraft carrier. I had friends that went into V2 division and V1, and I used to see those guys get ran ragged. And granted, we got ran ragged too during the, in V4, especially if you ever. I was on a conventional carrier, so that's a whole nother life, whole different lifestyle in comparison to like a modern carrier. But she Miss Betty mentioned something about men getting raped. I've heard. I knew someone that actually got raped, got sexually assaulted in the birthing on deployment, and I had a personal experience where someone tried their luck, and unfortunately, they failed miserably. And that's all I'm going to. I'm going. I will probably go more into details when a project of mine is done, but I've seen and experienced these things as a man in the military. I've seen homoeroticism firsthand, and it's not boys being boys. I've seen some crazy stuff, and I was in the late '90s, so there were still a lot of things lingering from 10 years prior in the Navy from the tailhook incident that happened around '92. And what happened with the tailhook was a bunch of naval aviators had a convention, and what they like to do is like they put everybody in a line. They like it looked like a Soul Train line, and they have to come down the line and they have to get groped. And at this time, they was opening up the uh, the, the Navy, opening up to women, and there was women who got sexually assaulted because of that. Years later, I've actually talked to another woman. She was one of when they start bringing in the women on the ships. This happened around '96. So, and I talked to a female officer. She was telling me about her experiences, and it was it. I she wrote a book about her experiences. And she went. This woman went through hell. Um, I've seen a lot of, like I was talking to Tieesha earlier, and I told her some of the stories, some of the things I seen and experienced, and it's it's like one of those things that I can't believe that actually happened, but it actually happened. And then years later, when I got on the Truman, when I got to the Truman, my first month on board, um, I learned that the ship was when the restriction muster on the ship was like over 100 deep. And I asked someone who was checking me in, like, I asked them what's going on. They said, oh, they busted a prostitution ring on the ship. This was around 2000, like April 2003, and this was right at the start of the Iraqi war. So the ship was out to sea for 100 days straight. You have 100 days straight out to sea doing figure eights in the Persian Gulf with an integrated ship. Things like these are going to happen. And the irony of this is that the person who was the madam was an MA. She was a master at arms. She was security. She was a MP. So it's, when you think about it, it's the culture of the military, and it's something has been ingrained in modern times for about maybe 60, 70 years, and then it's never been checked.
Now, if I can ask, thank you so much, Kareem, for sharing that. Miss Betty, if I can ask you, are you still here? Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Great. Just that we don't have camera, but don't worry about it. We have your words. We'll get it figured out. I want to come to you and talk to you like, okay, so what ties Fort Hood, what's currently occurring at Fort Hood, and with our sister LaVena Johnson, is that Fort Hood, when their soldiers deployed at that time, they went to Iraq. And Fort Hood is known as a just, I don't want to say a bad word, but it's like I don't know, a cesspool. But there's been some things occurring at Fort Hood, like Kareem said, the active shooter around 2009. Also, there is large amount of cases about domestic violence, other crimes such as a prostitution ring that happened there at Fort Hood. And so this is the culture, or this is like, I'm gonna say the culture of those soldiers that came from this base in Texas and went to Iraq. Now, one thing I noticed within the last year, I talked about it not only on this channel, Tieesha Essex, but also my other channel, Surviving Domestic Violence. I talked about how the UCMJ was recently changed to address rape. So
yeah,
around the time when me and LaVena Johnson, our fallen sister, came into the military, sending troops like in this large amount, we were fighting the global war on terrorism and Iraqi freedom at that time. So we were so having Americans overseas along with American contractors was new. So there were not laws in place to protect the local the local population from, these crimes that are happening not on American soil, but over here on newly formed bases. So Queen Mother Betty, can you tell us about your knowledge of, actually and actively serving on Army bases? Can you tell us, is this, the culture or your firsthand experience and things like that?
Let me tell you, after being in the service for a while, you get to look at a person and look at their wives that come out and meet them off the bus. When they get off the bus, you can imagine what their house look like on the inside. You just get a pattern. You just see patterns, You see patterns. And being from the South, growing up, half the growing up was in Chicago, but seeing the KKK come down the street and everything, let me tell you something. What goes around comes around. Those same racist KKK, their wives are scared of them. Their children are scared of them. The neighborhood is scared of them because they know that they got connections. So you don't just turn your hate off when you get off the job and come home to your loving family. They don't turn that hate off. If they let them go buck wild in Texas, when they get over to Iraq, they continue on with the problem. Like I said, they want numbers. They don't care how sick you are. They want to, and then the Army is known to let anybody in, okay? The Navy is a little bit more critical. The Air Force, more critical, but when it comes to the Army will let anything in. They just want the numbers. And I don't mean to hurt nobody's feelings, but I was Army, I was there, I saw, and I don't lie, not intentionally, you know. So that's just the atmosphere. It's just the atmosphere. Adrenaline. Some people can't turn it off. And you have to remember, these young people coming into the service, look at the household they came from. They came from white supremacist parents, especially the ones in the South. They're in the North too. They came from that environment, and they try to curtail it because they know 9 out of 10, this brother over here gonna have to watch my back. So I don't want to say anything because he might have to save my life. But see, a serial killer can't stop killing. He gonna slip up. A liar can't stop lying. He gonna slip up. A wife beater, he said, "Oh, I ain't gonna do it no more." No, that's a lie. You gonna do it again. You gonna do it again. So you have a choice. Everybody's got a choice. If you messed up, you need to go talk to somebody and get some help. I had to, and get your life right. Just get your life right. We can't help who our parents was. Thank God I had decent parents. A lot of people had decent parents. But something happened to some people along the way. I really do believe it was already in them, and they just had to be put in a certain environment to just go buck wild. My mama ain't here, my daddy ain't here, my relatives ain't here. I can do whatever I want to do. I'm grown. I got 3 hots in a cot, as they say, a paycheck. And they don't just put you out at randomly like that. They give you a chance. It's almost like getting a government job and federal job. They can't fire you that easy. A veteran job at the VA, they can't fire you that easily, So you got some security there, and they just take advantage of it. They push the envelope as far as that they can. But they know the kind of guys that come in there. After a while, you can sense them, especially if you have to study people. If you have to study people, you start to see patterns and say, don't drink nothing. Remember, I was teasing you. Don't ever take a drink of water from Bill Cosby. Never let Mike Tyson whisper in your ear. I can go on and on. You got to pay attention. What some of these people are doing out here. Oh, just like people will tell you, oh, she's a good friend of mine. She's a good friend of yours. That don't make her a good friend of mine. I ain't met her yet. I don't know her like you. I don't hear the same rapport that you have with this person. So you just can't be put in the same fishbowl with everybody. You got to be that fish that comes back and look at all the other fish swimming around to see who you can trust. And that's all I got to say about that. But I've heard several over the years, every time we have they don't ever say it's a war, it's a conflict, it's a whatever, anytime you the ruling class of a country, you can just say anything you want to say anyway. Whatever comes to your mind, you can say, and that's what it's going to be. But every war, every conflict, the same thing keeps happening over and over and over again. You don't want your daddy to go and hunt this guy down to kill him, because what's that's going to prove? If I was his family, which I'm not, and I don't mean to disrespect these people in any way, because I know what they're going through. I went through it today too, just watching it. I had to stop and come back to it. His picture would be posted. They know who he is. His picture would be posted everywhere in his hometown. And I would drive down there with them and help them to put it on every lamp pole, every store window, and let everybody know what kind of freak he is, and now he's a murderer. So that's what I wanted to say.
Kareem, do you have anything to add on to that?
I wholeheartedly agree. It's you have a most people when they join, they bringing the things that they already been indoctrinated beforehand into the military. In the military, they indoctrinate you to kill. That's your job, or to be object. Think abstract in in killing. Like because we're in the Navy, we're not directly on the ground. We're not boots on the ground, so it seems like an abstract concept to a war. Combat seems abstract. Was for a time for me, would seem like an abstract concept. But you have individuals who come in to the military with this baggage. You have most most young men who come into the military. They come into the military already addicted to drugs. It just so happens that boot camp gives you an 8-week detox. But as soon as they're out of boot camp and they're able to go out into the community, the first thing they're going to do is go and get them a fix. Either it's cocaine or meth, heroin, whatever. Someone mentioned that in the chat that they had meth heads in the army. They had meth heads in the Navy. I knew a guy that got kicked out because he was on meth, but he got kicked out for something else. I used to know tons of guys that they used to brag about going on coke binges over the weekend. I knew one guy who bragged about being addicted to heroin. Um, and it's ironic because someone mentions in the chat that the military sounds like a plantation and a prison. Um, the name of my book is actually going to be called "Just Another Day Aboard the Steel Plantation," because I used to refer to the Navy, the aircraft carriers as a steel plantation. And it didn't help when my first 6 months in, I was listening to Wynton Marsalis's "Blood on the Fields," his oratorio on slavery, and the first act of it is about the Middle Passage, and the first tune is actually a bass ostinato simulating the boat going. Now imagine you 18-year-old black kid from Detroit listening to that, stuck on a naval ship in a rack in a cubicle that's 6 deep. It affects you. You know, and seeing that culture, the the old school Navy culture, the not so much the watered down culture that it is now. It's still there, but I'm talking like true hardcore old school Navy. It's a trip, and even now, even more so later on, where I got to see a lot of the things on the Truman. A lot of these guys hide themselves in plain sight. They use the one of the best ways to find who they are is their tattoos. Their tattoos are dead giveaways. Most guys have like Celtic or Germanic runes, skulls, um certain they alter it, but certain like today there was a Trump put out his campaign shirt and it looks like something out of not of Nazi propaganda. Um, same types of tattoos of hawks and eagles, and it's and then the key is when they talk to you, when you talk to them and it's sort of like this, they have this already idea of who you are as a person, and unfortunately some hide their biases because they look at you as you're their brother, but in reality you're not their brother, because when they go back home they revert back to who they were before, other than now they're trained killers. So it's a part of it's a part of the overall culture of the military. Not it's not so much just the army, it's the entire military. You know, it might be the Air Force is probably the most progressive of the four branches, but they still have the issues too. But the Navy and the Marines and the Army, they're the oldest of the branches, so they have a lot of ingrained traditions. You know, me and Tieesha know the original, know the Navy core values: honor, courage, commitment. The original Navy before 1996, the original core values of the Navy was excellence, commitment, and tradition. The word tradition got Navy in a lot of trouble, so they changed it and adopted the Marine Corps values. It was more of a PR stunt and a marketing tool because they tried to rebrand themselves after everything that happened in the 90s. And here's the interesting thing too. Someone commented on in Korea and Japan. They used to rape the girls. When I got to Japan in '98, 2 years prior, there was three Marines that raped a Japanese girl down in Okinawa. When I got back to Japan in 2009, three Marines again, and the three Marines were it was actually four Marines. It was two gunnery sergeants, a staff sergeant, and a corporal decided to go rape a Japanese girl, a Japanese woman. And unfortunately for them, because they raped the Japanese government want them to be held accountable. And there's multiple. I have stories of cases where service members overseas have murdered or killed individuals. I know of a sailor who killed a Japanese taxi driver because some strange reason he decided to take a taxi from Tokyo to the base, and that's an expensive, very expensive taxi ride. And not to saying that he sounds like he had a lot of mental issues, but he killed the Japanese cab driver, and it totally changed everything everything over there. And then when I went back there a couple years ago, and just so happens that someone down in Okinawa got drunk and killed a Japanese man on the road. It's it's the culture, it's the American culture. They don't care because it's not them.
If I can get in real quick, I just found out this. I have to like really look more into it, but I want everybody who's watching this video and also in the military, you know, one thing that I think that comes into play with, you know, especially the incident, the tragic alleged murder of our sister LaVena Johnson, you know, could be the SOFA agreement. And the SOFA agreement, I'll give you the Reader's Digest version off of Wikipedia real quick. The SOFA is intended, status of forces agreement is intended to clarify the terms under which foreign military is allowed to operate. This may include issues such as entry and exit into the country, tax liabilities, postal services, employment terms for host nationals, but also most contentious issues are civil and criminal jurisdiction over bases and personnel. So I really I I mean also to tie that in as well because I'm jumping, but at the time of 2003, after 9/11, that's when it was the war on terrorism, Operation Iraqi Freedom and stuff. I remember after I was already in the military, there were people who are like, yeah, I was before the judge and they gave me the option, go to jail or go into the military. So,
Mm-hmm.
during that time, we had those individuals coming into the military, and you're
Yeah.
putting a weapon in their hand and giving them, you know, legal lawful orders to go and take lives, you know,
Yeah,
and things like that. And that's one thing that that really messes with my mind because to get into the military, you don't take a psychological evaluation. Those who they deem or you get your rate, you know, assigned to you, you really don't have a choice. You get a controlled choice. I had ASVAB in the 60s and I ended up being an ABF. You wanted to be a musician, but they give you what you're gonna be.
yep,
Those who go into these positions where they are armed or military police, you know, they're given that. You know, it's not like, well, I don't want to be a police officer. It's those who are put in these positions with this amount of power, who never had this before, or who was facing, you know, criminal prosecution. They get this power, and they, as you said, they take these behaviors and continue these illegal acts no matter where they go.
It was like some years ago when they used to talk about the Mexican street gangs using military tactics. Yeah, I remember the art, like Miss Betty said, the army will they're looking for bodies, so they will waive everybody just to have the bodies. So you have these members of these Mexican gangs. They join the military, do their 4 years to get out. They go back home. They're teaching their friends these tactics. It's the same thing that happened in the 60s and 70s. The brothers just went over to Nam. A lot of them was because they deemed us like we couldn't get the high end jobs. A lot of brothers was infantry or special forces. They was also stationed in places like Japan and Korea and the Philippines, so they got martial arts training. When they got out, a lot of them brothers went back home and taught the neighborhood guys how to fight. It was Geronimo Pratt was uh, a he won the Silver Star. You got to do a lot of shit to win the Silver Star. Yeah, that's a lot of bodies just for a ribbon. And he taught the Black Panthers military tactics. He taught them how to use. He taught them how to use what guns to use, how to use them, how to police their SWAT teams, their tactics, because they come from the same playbook. And that's how Geronimo Pratt was able to fend off the LAPD when the LAPD was shot at the Black Panthers headquarters in Los Angeles, because he trained. He was the minister of defense, and there was a lot of brothers, and a lot of the brothers was coming back from the war, teaching the neighborhood cats how tactics and how to properly use a gun, how to properly clean a gun, maintain a gun, you know. And that's the thing they were scared of. So from a certain period, they started limiting the numbers of brothers in the infantry, or certain rate or certain jobs and MOSs and rates that allowed you to be able to get weapons training, or more advanced weapons training, so to say. You get weapons training in the boot camp, but and they put you in MOS. They put a lot of us, say like Army guys. I talked to a lot of brothers in the Army. A lot of those brothers was cooks. I know a lot of brothers that was cooks. And in the Navy, a lot of us was either cooks, airedales, worked in weapons, or deck department, which deck department all they did was paint the ship. So they was very cautious for a certain time period. I would say between the 80s, because they didn't want us to come back home and teach the individuals in the neighborhood how to fight. But now that's re-emerging, because now you have people like myself who are Iraqi and Afghan war veterans, and we're coming back home and we see everything going on. So we're teaching people how to use the weapons. And you have instances, because of this, you have instances with people like Christopher Dorner and Micah Thomas, who remember their oath to the Constitution, and remember that the oath is not to the president, it's to the Constitution of the United States of America, to defend it against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Who's the number one domestic enemy in our country right now? The police force. And so because of that, these individuals decided to go into maximum compensatory action and decided to take it upon themselves to put fire upon his enemy, who he deemed, which is the police force. So now they're scared of that again. So now, like, people, I'm pretty sure I'm like any black veteran who is kind of being watched in many ways, because they want to make sure we're not, planning. Every time I go to the VA and talk to the doctors, they ask me how I'm doing and things like that, and I give them vague answers because of the fact that they don't want us to teach our sons and daughters and our brothers and sisters how to fight.
Miss Betty?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any follow up as far as your experiences and what you experienced as far as like homegrown domestic terrorism in the army?
Two things. I want to say one of my grandfather's famous sayings, because I do everything in his honor. All in my ambition, all the things I accomplished, I'm doing it because he wasn't able to accomplish them. He all my granddaddy said this, so I don't want nobody to be writing me and this and that. My grandfather said that he's gone. He's gone. If you got to die, take somebody with you. I never understood that until now. Because I'm not a violent person. And I hate violence, But that's where he was. That's where his head was. But what he had to live through. And the second one is, and it's probably going to blow some people's mind, but I want you to think about it. Do you think 9/11 was really 9/11 like they said it was? We got a lot of money in that building, those two twin towers. We taking care of a lot of oil money in the twin towers. If they was to withdraw their money, we would be up creek. Okay. Oh, by the way, I'm a little bit of a musician too. I had a band here
Okay.
for like 10 years here in Oregon, but I'm in Arizona now. But anyway, just like China, if China called that note in, and a few other countries we borrow money from, we gonna have to start speaking. What's they Tagalog or whatever they call it?
Mandarin.
Mangling. We're going to have to start speaking some other languages because we're going to be truly a diversified country by then. So that's the only two things that I wanted to say that I never understood what my daddy meant when he said that. If you got to die, take somebody with you.
Yeah,
He spent 20 years of his life because somebody's trying to cheat him, But anyway, I just want to say out there in cyberland that I want everybody to take care of themselves. I want you to drink a lot of water, good water, alkaline water. Don't just drink any tap water. Eat more vegetables. Try to grow your own vegetables. I'll be 70 years old in 2 more years. If I hadn't cut off my dreadlocks, I'd probably look a little bit younger, but I don't have no makeup on. I got it cropped off. I got it all cropped off. I can start all over again because my hair grows really fast. In 10, 11 years, it grew like this. I started out like this to get rid of the perm, and it grew all the way down to my butt.
Yes.
Then little bitty ones, easy to clean. Because I couldn't understand how Jamaicans had all that hair and all that heat. I'm like,
my mother,
hot?
my mother,
used to it, man.
My mother, her dreads
anyway,
is.
I love everybody, out there in cyberland. Take care of yourself, and life is short. We are very unique. We didn't have to be here. We're still here. I'm still here. I'm still here. I'm still here. Love you.
Love you too, Queen Mother Betty. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I really appreciate you, and I love you so much. And you're always welcome back. You'll definitely be back to share your.
Oh yeah.
Kareem, you have anything?
A comment on when Betty's talking about her dreads. My mother's dreads are already down to her butt, and my mother was growing her dreads since 2002. So, and I ask her all the time, like, how do you, she's just, when she goes to work, she wraps it up. But I'm looking at some of the chat. I think is speaking on on her case. If we had social media like we have it now, I think it would be a bigger deal. We did have social media, at that time. It was called MySpace and Black Planet and sites like that. So it wasn't, but because of the news cycle at that time, it was brought up in passing, and then the biggest story of the year happened, which was Katrina. But I think it's important to bring up her case, in in the context as it's today, and considering what happened at Fort Hood recently with Vanessa Guillen, and the situation that's going on right now. There's a lot of parallels between her case and what happened to Laverne, and we have to, just like we are with Breonna Taylor, making sure that we bring her name up and trying to get and forcing the the Attorney General of Kentucky to file charges against these these race soldiers. I'm gonna use Tariq Nasheed's terms, race soldiers. Um, we have to do the same, because there's when you're black and you're in the military or the police force, you're in the heart of the empire. You're the heart of white supremacy. You're a part of the enforcement wing of white supremacy. The military just handled it internationally, where the police force is the domestic wing. And we have to, as black service members, we had to endure so much, and many continue to endure so much, just to get paid on the 1st and 15th, just so we can, if those who decide to make it a career, to put on your max pay grade. And for what? At the end of the day, you do your 20 years, you out, and you have to start all over again. Granted, you're getting a pension, but you're not leaving the same person that you left. You're not leaving, even in 4 years, you're not leaving the same person that you walked into. And I don't like how the military prey upon individuals in our community, and particularly young black men and young black women who come from volatile home lives and situations. If any of you read the book Antoine Fisher, he talked about he grew up in the foster care system, and he felt the reason he joined, because he felt like he didn't have any options available to him. And after he witnessed his best friend getting killed, he joined the next day. He essentially talked to a recruiter, went to MEPS, and told him he wanted to ship out that day. And if you read his book or even seen his movie, you notice a lot of the problems he had. And it was particularly with the white boys who would talk out the side of their mouth, would say slick stuff, and disrespect him. And a young black man in that position, his only reaction is to fight back. I've known people who have been disrespected and been grievously disrespected, including myself, because you didn't want to play ball or play by the rules. And I know a lot of people don't want to hear this, but a lot of black people who end up staying 20 years, a lot of them are have to become nihilistic in many ways. And I'm trying not to say certain words, so Tieesha channel doesn't get demonetized and things like that. But I will use the word my mother used, bootlicks. A lot of them have to become bootlicks to get ahead. The military touts that you have to stand on your own 2 feet. If you can stand on your own 2 feet and do what you're told, you're going to get ahead. But that's a lie. If you're black, that's a huge lie. It's about how much ass you can kiss and how much you're willing to degrade yourself and who you are as a human being, as a black person, so you can get a couple of chevrons on your sleeve and make it to the pay grade of E7.
And Kareem, I want to thank you so much for bringing up the movie Antoine Fisher, because you was him. And shout out to brother Antoine Fisher, and the actors that brought his story to the big screen. Shout out to my fellow Ohioan. But that is absolutely real, because us who are freshly in the military at that time, you're not aware of discrimination, racism. You don't know how to put the proper terms on these things. So when you're going through these things, you're like, who do I turn to? Like, I'm out here. Like, my mindset when I joined the military was that I'm joining with other people who are just like me, who are honorable, who share a common goal, who are here to and someone also mentioned, just because you're in the same uniform, you're still Black. I remember the quote, and I remember this quote from the time I watched the movie of Shaft with Samuel L. Jackson, the first one. He was like, in the uniform, you're too Black for the blue, but too blue for the brothers.
Yep.
That's absolutely it. Because although we wore purple shirts, we were not in that club. We were not in what's called the good old boys club that we now know about, in
Yep.
our midlife. We were not, well, I can say I was not. I know that your parents did a phenomenal job of, preparing you for the world. I had to learn by trial and error, and great people in my life like yourself and Miss Betty, who, she was just phenomenal and confirmed a lot of things. But, now that we're in this, now that everything has been, brought to a head, because racism, discrimination, and murder because of race and things like that, and injustice didn't just start with George Floyd. It didn't start with our fallen sister Breonna Taylor. This has been going on since we've stepped foot on this country. So it's just now coming to a head because we're using technology, and we're sick and tired of being sick and tired. But it's been going on, and I'm thankful to you and everybody else who are in the comments and sharing their experiences as well, because we've been taught to be quiet about it. Stuff like military sexual assault. Military sexual assault just became a thing a couple of years ago. Like,
Yeah.
and I want to bring up the name Pat Tillman, because Dr. John Johnson, the father of our fallen sister LaVena Johnson, he stated that Pat Tillman's mother brought up LaVena Johnson's name, and that helped bring additional attention to her. So that's why it sparked me today, because it is July. LaVena Johnson would be 35 years old this year, and she was also murdered a week before her birthday.
Yeah.
Her parents should be celebrating her 35th birthday, not mourning the loss of their daughter. And that's why I decided to bring it up. So, but also with the Fort Hood murders as well, and or the incidents occurring at Fort Hood, it's important that we bring her up. So what do you have to add to that?
It's important because I'm gonna tell the story, and it's and I actually did something about this. As back in 2007, the ship got out of the shipyards, and I returned back to V4 division. So which means when a ship comes out of the shipyard for a long period of time, they have to do a lot of workups. They have to go out to sea 2 weeks here, 2 weeks there. So one particular 2 weeks, there were some reservists that came on board, and reservists out of Michigan, out of the air base here in Michigan. You talk to them, they just like, they're just doing their 2 weeks, they're, you get to play Navy for 2 weeks and they go back home. One particular person, he had his laptop with him, and he used to, most guys used to, carry their laptop with them, play music or watch videos. There was a rumor going around that this particular individual was showing pornographic videos, but pornographic videos of a certain nature. So I remember I'm walking into Irving, I'm headed to my rack, and I see him. I say, hey, he says, hey, what's up to me? I said, hey, he said, I want to show you something. I said, sure, like whatever. And he opens up his laptop and shows me, and it was child pornography. It was pedophilia. So the first thing I told him, he's a reservist E6, and I was an E4, and I said, Close that shit right now and never show that shit to me again. The first thing I did was turn around. I went down to my supervisor's office, and these individuals down there. I got. I go down there and I tell them this person had a video. It had child pornography. These assholes tell me, "Shut the fuck up. It's none of your concern. He's gone in a week. You'll never see him again. Don't worry about it." And I'm like, "You motherfuckers is child. This motherfucker's a diddler. We don't care. That's not your concern. Do your go back and do your job." I was in a position where I couldn't do anything. Only thing I could do was at the end of the 2 weeks when we pulled back in, they came back here to Michigan, is that I got his name and I reported him to the Michigan State Police.
Mm-hmm.
And when I reported, I actually called in and explained to him who I was. I was in, and I said it's on his laptop. It's like it's legit on his laptop. And they asked me, "Why haven't you reported to the military?" I said I did. I reported to my supervisors. They told me to shut the fuck up. It's not your concern. And things I would learn later about these individuals, it makes all perfect sense. A lot of because of the culture, you had these discussions about the military. A lot of military members are addicted to porn.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it starts off as the porn addiction isn't just your typical heterosexual porn. It grows because you need to get more excited by different
things
things
to get you off.
They indulge, and now you have to. So your because your addiction grows, you need something more hardcore. So they go to hardcore, then they go to.
It's like a drug,
Yeah.
When you start with this, you need more and more to reach that initial high again.
Yeah. So it did surprise me when they said that to me, because a few months later I walked into Belodek's office, and an E7 was doing the helicopter while two E6 and E5 and an E3 sat there and cheered him on, an E7. And this individual. You know two of these individuals.
Wow.
You know the chief. You know the first class.
Wow. And that is so crazy, because when I first came in, I joined at 17, and by the time I got to the boat, I was 18. And I remember this is like in 2003 when, I would go, I worked the second shift where I worked, they call it graveyard, whatever.
Yeah.
But I would go into the Belodek's office, and they would be watching BT Uncut.
BT Uncut, yep.
BT Uncut. And they were like, and they'll just have it on. And I'm like, wow, this is what y'all get excited about. But also too, being one of the only females, in Belodek's, I gotta go in this pump room with y'all for 12 hours a day. I remember being in the pump room and finding pornographic magazines and stuff like that. Like they were bringing on before I go out to see them in the pump room. I remember I was going into the pump room because not many people know what I'm talking about, but there is the ladder that comes down into the pump room. Then you have the console. The console where you have the computers, and then there's this huge door hatch. You go into the pump room where you have all of your machinery and stuff. And so because I was E3 and below, I came in the Navy as an E9, as an E1, you couldn't sit in the air conditioning in the console room. You had to go out in the pump room. And so I remember one time I was going into the pump room where they told me to go, but I remember they used to beat off in there. They used to jack off in there to their magazines, So that I was going into the pump room, and I used to hate touching the rags because those were the jerk off rags. I used to hate it with all my heart. And so one time I was going out and I think that somebody was in the act of doing it. And the first, at the time, he was a second class. I think you might know who I'm
I
talking
know. I
about.
we're gonna piggyback to another story.
And he's like, go away, go away. And so this just it ties in this rape culture, and it ties into the fallen soldier Vanessa Guillen, if I
Yep.
pronounce her name correctly, out of Fort Hood. She made a complaint about sexual assault and things like that. And like I said, I have that history of it, and I can tell you, you can make a report about these things. And like I said, military sexual assault and sexual violence is so new. It's still new. It's like there's not really a mechanism in place to stop it without re-victimizing the victim. Because I
Yep.
talked about it, I was so eager to get justice, to be protected from my offender. I kept telling the story again and again and again. Nothing happened. Nothing happened. And I'm just like, that's why it's so important to bring these things to light.
Yes. Going back, because the individual you're talking about, I met him when he was a third class on the Independence, and in those days, on because the Indy was the last old school carrier. I'm talking about old school Navy. In the pump rooms, because we didn't have consoles, it was just the pump room operator and the safety man. They used to, in the pump rooms, you used to have a desk where you can do the logs and things like that. Down in our pump rooms at that time, we used to have. I used to find the penthouse forums, the books. They used to come in like little books about this big, and they used to have the magazines. And we down in those pump rooms, we used to have pump room titties of the week, or pump rooms cholo. The Puerto Rican dude put pump room cholo of the week, or something like that. So there was always a display of women. I remember the first time I saw underway replenishment on my first underway replenishment, and after everything was done, I used to see a line from the ship store, and the ship store on the Independence was on the second deck. It was right between the forward and the aft mess decks, and I saw a line from where the door entry to the store started to the aft mess decks. So I'm like, what's going on? The dude was like, it's porn day. And I look at him and say, well, like, really? He was like, yeah, it's porn day. It's the day they got the day that they got all the magazines in. And at that time, before, I think in '99, Clinton banned the sale of hardcore pornography on the military bases. You can get hardcore pornography at the exchanges and at the ship stores. And I'm not talking like Playboy or Pinhouse. I'm talking about the hardcore stuff, triple X rated stuff. And it was a ritual. And another thing, back in those days, guys used to sit in the lounge in the Bervings and watch porn ad nauseum. Like, I never seen 10, 15 guys in front of a TV watching Jenna Jameson. That shit blew my mind. I'm like, what? And they're just sitting there watching it, and they're watching it like it's Sunday Night Football. It's crazy. And I asked at my second class at the time, like, he's just like, that's just the norm. You get used to it. I never seen anything like that. This dude just sitting in front of a TV, 20 dudes watching porn, and how obsessive they were about pornography. Years, there was in the below decks computers, there was if you knew what you was doing, there was a secret file of pornography.
Mm-hmm.
And when I went to Afghanistan, there was also the same thing. Actually, a sergeant gave me when I first checked in, gave me a SD card, flash drive. He gave me a flash drive, like a 8 gig flash drive. I said, what is this? He said, you're going to need it. And he said, and I could tell you, if you need to hook up, I can tell you. So that, you know, they had in the flash drive, which is nothing but porn, just all porn.
I know this is really tough to talk about, so I really commend you for, talking about it. And this is stuff that many of us just hold in, because we don't come back home and say, well, hey mom, because my last name is Essex, they keep on putting my name as, Airman Sex and Airman Sexy and making fun of me. My family don't even know the shit that I've been through.
Yeah,
You know, I remember there was a sailor, he was a submariner. He told me on the submarine that they'd actually made a file. It was like a drive to
yeah,
access porn, and only certain people had access to it. And I remember when I was in, it was during a time when laptop computers became popular.
popular. It was
So
affordable.
yeah, so I was in the pump room, and you'll have a guy over in the corner, and he's actively watching porn on his laptop. This was common. Not only did I have to deal with what was going on, like this was BT Uncut on the ship's TV. It wasn't on
It,
a personal laptop. This
no,
was on the ship's
ships
TV.
TV.
And if you go into like the HT shop, that the HT shop was known as the pipe shop, where they'll lay the pipe, but they also worked on pipes. They had it playing in there. So it just depended on where you went about in the ship, and these things were available. And this is stuff that we were, exposed to.
I used to see guys when the iPods, the original iPods came out, and they used to sit there and just. I used to see guys in the P-way with headphones on, just sitting there, and you're like, "What are you watching?" And it's porn. I'm like, "Okay," and just walk off. My shop, the shop I worked at, the computer back there, if you dig around, you can find the files. Um, Another thing, and I told you this, but this probably still happens to this day. If you go into the male heads, the male bathrooms, and go into the showers, they used to plaster pictures on the wall of the showers. So you used to walk into a shower, you see porn, pictures of women all plastered on the wall. So you go to the next shower, it's the same thing. The next shower, it's the same thing. So it's like you have to like bite the bullet and peel it off the wall. And or I used to take some of the on the kiosk. We used to have the shower heads that can come. You had to press. You just press. You rinse, and I used to take that and just spray down the walls just to get it off the wall, because it's that was like when I first saw it, it was like the weirdest thing ever. Just like to walk into a shower, you see just porn plastered. Oh, I remember one time I actually was in the shower, and the dude next to me was masturbating, and you can literally hear him just moaning. I'm sitting there just like, so I stopped and waited. Like I was like, what the hell? Stopped, got out, went to the next head, because I'm like, nah, I'm not, you know, the, it, I'm not dealing with that, and it's highly present in the military. And
Yeah. And think about it this way, like you actually deploy, like for people don't know what the individual augmentee is pretty much a Navy person, you know, in the realm of like army person or a marine that's like on the ground. I know the Air Force deploy in our boots on the ground as well, which is why many of us joined the Navy, because I'm like, well shoot, I got, eventually I developed bad feet, and I'm like, I can't be out here chasing Charlie and all them, so I'm gonna stay on the boat. But you actually was, over in the sand, overseas. And that's where our sister LaVena Johnson was. And she was also around deployed military members, but also contractors.
contractors,
And because her murder still goes, unprosecuted, unnamed to this day. I most recently, when I'm reading what's going on, she was found in a contractor's tent. Apparently, her body was, left there, and they tried
yeah,
to set her on fire. So right now, anybody is a suspect
it,
besides her. And I actually, when I was in Washington, I was partnered up with a dude. He just came out and said, I'm prior Army, and then I worked for this contracting company. I won't say the name, but he was just, just he was a white male, And to me, he was like kind of, I don't give a F word about you. And me, I'm just like,
Yeah.
and to myself, I'm like, well, I go toe to toe with anybody. You're not going to teach me anything I don't already know. You just here for a check in the box. So he was trying to do this mental mind game.
Game. Emotional manipulation is what they refer to it as.
I would say if I was 18-year-old Tieesha, it would have got to me. But being Tieesha that I was at that moment, I'm like, you know what? I don't even fear God. You know what I'm saying? So we go toe to toe. You want to bring it, and we ain't gonna play this game.
Yeah.
And he ended up like a few hours into us being paired up. He requested that I be assigned to somebody else for the remainder of my like inspection. I'm like, cool, because you're not gonna run me away, player. I'm supposed to be here.
Yeah.
And, I just, how important is it that senior? I mean, our sister LaVena Johnson, she had her father who was an Army veteran, but how important, I mean, I know they say the importance, and she did not have a battle buddy to keep her safe on that base. That was the one thing that her father brought to attention. But how important is it to have, someone who was senior, continue to mentor someone who was younger, or, to really put that truth, who has no involvement or no investment in that position at all, but to really, steer that person and protect that person. How important is that?
It is important because I survived the Kitty Hawk because of a senior chief, ABFC and ABFC, because he saw something in me that nobody did, and he was like, he even actually said it. Just like, I'm gonna make sure you get into the Navy band. It's important to have. When I first got to the Truman, we had a black LPO, that's leading petty officer, or non-commissioned officer in charge of the entire division, and our below decks LPO was also black. So they looked out for us. Things changed when our below decks LPO became white, and we had a black senior chief, but we had a black senior chief who was only looking out for him, a black chief that only was looking out for himself, because he was trying to move up from a chief to an officer. So the things he was doing, he only did things that only made him look good. He wasn't going to reach out his hand to you to help you get to where you need to be. His thing was, well, what are you going to do to make me look good so I can become an officer? That was his plan.
Shout out to commenter Rum and Coke. They brought up something really important. I'm glad you brought this up, because I would have been so mad had I ended this video and not touched on that. But you stated that the military CID, and CID is criminal investigation. Yeah, and it is a conflict of interest. They will not investigate properly. They're higher rank officers. They can get away with murder.
Yep.
Shit needs to change. They need an external agency. And I wanted to tie that in as well, because with our sister LaVena Johnson, is coming up on 15 years, and her family still does not have the truth on what happened to their daughter. And I'm happy, I talked about this in a few videos back, I'm happy that a lot of the shows such as Cops, Live PD, and stuff like that, Hawaii Five-0, which I was on a couple of episodes, are done.
Yeah.
These things are serious, and they're not solved in just a hour show with commercials. Like, our sister is 15 long years. This will be a long ass freaking hour that her family still does not have answers. And they ruled their baby's death a suicide, which means any kind of insurances or entitlements that she was entitled to, her family cannot get those, because they ruled a suicide versus a murder, and not giving this family justice. So one thing I wanted to say about like military investigative units is, I was just in Washington, in the Seattle area, and there was this huge drug distribution ring happening amongst the Navy officers there. They were selling coke in Seattle, doing coke, just all types of illegal shit. And if y'all, for those who don't know, Joe Biden's son, he was in the Navy and he
Yeah.
on cocaine. So there is drugs in the military.
And he still got out with an honorable discharge.
Absolutely. And it took me 5 years dealing with bullshit just to get my honorable. But you know what I'm saying? Never popped on a piss test, but I was always the one they targeted to go take it.
Yeah.
It takes the light off of other people who really was using drugs on the weekends and stuff.
Yep. Because like the Army CI NCIS, the Criminal Investigative Services for the military is a joke. You look at the TV show, they got it's a joke. They make the job sound all cool. You know, it's a joke. Their job, they're essentially lower tier FBI agents. That's they're the guys who couldn't get into the FBI, but here's the military version of the FBI. So we're gonna you can go join them. Their job is essentially to uphold the integrity of the command. That's why there's always one agent afloat, and they'll rather follow a 20-year-old black kid for asking about why is the UI guys protesting and reading a few books than to go look into the drug ring by the naval officers. Because the reason why the Navy has some of the strenuous drug policy was because of the pilots, because they used to go up and get high. They used to go to coke before they go up. And then what started happening was that their accuracy landing planes was going down. Because if you was on a carrier, you'll know that pilots have to land for the third arresting gear cable. There's 4 on the aircraft carrier. There's 4 arresting gear cables. The third one is the target, because that's their target. So their accuracy was going down. Their the crashes was going up. Hot dogging was going up. Believe it or not, if you look at the movie Top Gun, they love showing that movie. Of that movie about naval aviator life. A lot. You best believe Tom Cruise's character and all those pilots was on cocaine, because that's what they did.
Real quick, didn't a plane crash on your deployment on the Truman right before y'all came back home? I remember.
Yep. The plane went up, went off the cat, landed right in the water. Happened twice. I seen three planes crash from the catapults, and the first thing they do is they look at fuels division. They look at us. So they look at from the QA, and then the filter room, and then the pump room. And it's usually not us. In all those instances, it was always a mechanical failure. In one instance, it was a pilot error. The pilot didn't check didn't do his pre-checks. I used to know guys when I was stationed in Japan, and I used to be out and about. I used to see guys out there buying from the Japanese mafia. The only way you can get drugs in Japan is through the Yakuza. Buying cocaine and buying weed from these guys. One of the interesting stories I have is that I befriended I didn't know he was a Yakuza boss. I didn't know he was. And the reason I befriended him, because he happened to be a jazz fan. He loved the music. So he used to, everywhere I played, he was there. And he used to tell me about everything, that he was aware of everything was going on. He actually asked me, am I on any drugs? I said, no. He said, good. He said, Daijobu. He said a lot of American GI on drugs. He spoke really good English, so so we can talk and communicate. And really gave me the heads up of nightlife and the scene, what was like the real Tokyo, not the Tokyo that people think they know from watching anime. You know, this the real true Tokyo. And it was I consider it a part of more of a continuation of my street education, because now I'm getting a street education from a different perspective, not from growing up here in Detroit in the height of the crack boom. Now I'm getting it from someone who's a part of an organized crime. And he used to tell me a lot of the officers were frequent a lot of the sex parlors in downtown Tokyo at that time. And in Japanese culture, they have a fetish culture. So I'm talking like sadomasochism, things like that. And he used to tell me about, it was a majority of white officers and white service members. He said he never seen any black GIs in these establishments when he used to have to go and collect the money. So
big thing, because up in Washington at the submarine base up there, it was a commanding officer of one of the submarines that was caught up, soliciting prostitutes and bringing them back to the hotel. And one of his, people underneath him, his subordinates, had turned him in and cooperated.
Yeah.
There was also an instance where a minor was up there in the barracks.
Yeah.
A lot of that happening. And I just want to, also too, it ties me into Seattle. And I was talking about the drugs. Now, the investigative services for the Navy is NCIS. The NCIS agent did their investigations, did a complete thorough investigation, presented to the commanding officer. But here's the thing, I talked about this on my channel, Surviving Military Domestic Violence, is that the ships or, things like that, that is like a little sovereign nation.
Yes.
And the head of that little sovereign nation is the
commanding officer. He is God.
So they choose what is prosecuted and what isn't. It's a damn shame that across the military, a DUI, they have zero tolerance for a DUI, but something like, sexual assault and, murder, an alleged apparent murder that happened to our sister LaVena Johnson, and also what is going on in Fort Hood, Texas right now, we can only press and demand that there is a thorough, complete, independent investigation and that justice is served. And with these current happenings, we continue to push LaVena Johnson's name out there, just like how Pat Tillman's mother and his death from what they call friendly fire, which was nothing friendly about it. Another U.S. service person or service people were, in cahoots with his murder, which should not have happened.
They was jealous. They was jealous of the fact that he was a football player, that he was a millionaire, and he decided to join to fight for his country. Most people consider that an honorable and noble thing.
Mm-hmm.
But they was jealous of the fact that how popular he was. Mm-hmm. And they wasn't the heroes no more. Mm-hmm. You got to remember, there was just last year, there was a Navy SEAL that got off for committing war crimes.
I think I remember that.
And the JAG Corps botched it because they gave one of the people in his unit immunity. When they gave him immunity, he can pretty much go up there and recant his entire story, in which he did, and that's how he got off. Not even a fight for making sure he retired as a chief, and Donald Trump is going to get involved and all of that. It takes like we was always told, for a naval chief, it takes an act of Congress to remove his rank. The most recent one was because of when that ship a few years ago, there was a ship that ran into a Japanese fishing boat, and they put everything on that black chief. It was a black chief.
Yep.
And because Congress had to go and apologize to the Japanese government, Yep, Chief Edward Gallagher apologized to the Japanese government and hold him. Since the military was holding him accountable, they gave the court martial authorization to reduce him in rank. Man spent 20 black chief spent 20 years, plus years in the Navy, got dishonorably discharged and reduced to E1. 20 years of his life gone because they pinned everything on him. He was a boatswain's mate. The people who should have went down was the CEO, the XO, and the ship navigator, not the black chief. They needed a scapegoat, and that's what they did. It's like a few months ago when the Teddy Roosevelt was in the news, and they was talking about the coronavirus. We both know firsthand the numbers that the Navy was telling was lies. It was BS, because we know how nasty the bulk of those people are on that ship. And I remember literally having to do health and comfort inspections and watch medical teach somebody how to wash his butt, how to take a shower, how to use soap. And I'm thinking, this is a 22-year-old man. He's getting taught how to take a shower. So when that captain decided he went through the chain, and the chains said, "No, you go out to sea to report the mission." And he didn't do it. They removed him. They removed him from his command. And I commend that man, because he put his crew. He actually put his crew first before his career. Because when you get to that point in your career as an officer, you're a CEO of a naval aircraft carrier. Your next step is to put on your first star. That's the last of the line right there. There's a career path, and that's the last of the line. He gave that up for his crew, so I commend him for that, because he tried to tell him, you don't. When the last time you was on one of these boats, on one of these ships, how nasty it is. You can attest from just being in the female berthing alone how nasty a lot of them women are, and I can attest from the male berthing how nasty a lot of them dudes are. I used to know guys that work 14 hours on the flight deck, come down, take off their flight deck uniform, and hit his rack. And I used to like, hey, you want to take a shower? You kind of. I remember one time I actually grabbed one dude out and had him in the headlock and forced him into the shower. And because I told the berthing PO and the LPO, and he was like, well, you can handle it. They said, you can handle it. I said, you want me to handle it? They said, yeah, you can handle it. So I got me and a couple of dudes. One of the dudes is a very good friend of mine. You know him very well. We pulled this motherfucker out of his rack, carried him to the shower, threw him in the shower. I poured some household cleaner on him and told him to scrub, because and to say, force people to say, oh, that's bullying. No, it's because that's health and comfort. That's the one big issue that comes from, like, one of the main diseases that happens on the ship is scabies. Scabies is when, if you don't know what it is, it's pretty much when insects grows out of your skin.
Right.
And of course, white people automatically get lice. So, and how you get scabies, because you don't wash your butt.
Mm-hmm.
And this dude had scabies, and he still wouldn't go to the shower. So
That's a big thing. That is huge. Like, people just don't realize. Like, my mom, I had to actually bring her on the ship when they had, like, what they call a Tiger Cruise. My
yeah,
mom, for the longest, and she still thinks that a Navy ship is like a Carnival cruise. She never been on a Carnival cruise, but she believes that I had it good, and they cook steak and king crab every day. I'm like, no, ma, that was just for y'all. Okay.
yeah.
But
Like, the only time we get steak and crab was the night before we pull in the home port, or
no,
pull into a port.
it was right before they had some bad news. Like, we're gonna
Bad news.
and it's crazy that and this what you're talking about. What reality is as you're serving versus what we send to our parents, is a completely different thing, because we don't want them worrying and stressing out. And on the movie Silent Truth about our sister LaVena Johnson, they had someone narrate the letters that she wrote back home. And my mom, she actually kept my postcards and my letters that I wrote when I was in the Navy and when I was in boot camp. But then when I got out, I got a cell phone. But when I look back at those letters, I'm like, wow, I withheld so much.
I didn't. When my first 6 months in, I told my mother everything. She was I'm like, Mom, these white boys are nasty. They don't take showers. They funky. They're racist. I said all of that. My first, like, I showed you pictures of when I was like my first, like my cruise book pictures. All my cruise book, you can't really tell because the I don't have good lighting in here, but I have a hard, stone cold hard face. All my cruise pictures of me looking like this dude, like don't mess with this dude, because
You never smiled.
I never smiled.
Smile with you and Chris. One
Yeah,
smile with you and Chris, and that's
and someone asked me that. It's like I look at my old cruise book, man. You never smile. I said because I had to deal with you nasty fucks.
shout out to a brother. I just thought about. I'm pretty sure he's watching. He won't comment, but he said your picture looked like you just crossed the burning sands.
Oh yeah, yep, yep, yes. I knew, like, my boot camp picture looks like, but a lot of it was I grew up here in Detroit, and I grew up where I grew up. It was like most people don't like how Detroit is broken up. You have East Side Detroit, West Side Detroit, and you have Highland Park. I'm from Highland Park. Highland Park was, if you look at the statistics back in the day, the 90s, Highland Park was the worst city in Michigan in the 90s. We was the hotbed of a lot of the murders and violent crimes in Detroit. And you grew up in that environment. In some of my own personal experiences I had, you had to be tough. Your awareness had to be like, you had to be totally aware of your environment. And the only cats who could relate to me was like cats from like LA or New York, because they had the similar stories. The only cast who really, like, I didn't reconnect with as far as the brothers was the cast from down south. Outside of maybe like New Orleans, if you was from New Orleans or Atlanta, but if you was somewhere, some small town in Alabama, we couldn't, or some small town out of Texas, we didn't relate because you didn't have my experiences. So all my pictures were from when I was in. I looked like I was. There used to be a song when I was a teenager called "I Got a Mirror in My Pocket" because I practiced looking hard. My picture used to be the definition of looking hard. That's how I looked, and even to this day, like, I don't like taking pictures because my facial expression. My mother has to explain to my cousins, like, that's his normal facial expression. Like, that's how he doesn't. That's how he is, and because of that, that actually, being on guard and being aware of everything that's around me sort of shielded me from a lot of the BS. And granted, I still experience BS. And make no mistake, every black person in the military experienced BS. But because of my personality, and because I wasn't afraid to speak my mind and stand up for myself, they gave me levels of protection, because now they realized that they couldn't really get over on me. I used to tell people, like, when they used to try to talk to me like I was stupid, like, y'all act like I just walked on this boat from the cotton fields. I used to say that a lot. Or, I'm not a goddamn criminal. I can't read. I could probably read better than you. You read, apparently, because in the military, The only requirement is that you got to be able to read at a third grade reading level. That's the requirement. If you can barely function, if you're functionally illiterate, you can get in. And especially if you're at certain rates in the Navy and in the Army, and if you're just a grunt in the Marine Corps, that's what they look for. They look for someone who's functional.
And I'm really happy that you brought that up as well, because tying back into like not like I was saying, my total observation of how our sister LaVena Johnson's apparent murder was just swept under the rug. They tried to just slide this right past her parents, assuming that they were dumb and not going to look further into this. We talked about the show, like the criminal investigation shows, but I just want to point out a few things with her at the crime scene that stood out, and her father and her uncle, and also those who have helped the Johnson family seek answers to truth and justice and the loss of our sister, was that they stated that she had someone planted a M16 rifle near her. However, she died from an apparent gunshot wound from an N9 to the left side of her head.
Yeah.
I talk about firearms on the channel as well. She was right-handed, and the
Yep.
shot, it went from the left side of her head, and it eventually found its way to her tongue. Her tongue was removed prior to her body leaving and arriving to the funeral home. Also, too, well, they tried to cover it up and say, well, she pulled the trigger of the M16 with her toe. And Kareem, you stated about her stature. She was 5'1", 100 pounds. Even me, I have long arms. You can go look at a picture of me with my firearm, and see that, my arms, I'm 5'10". I'm barely long enough to hold mine with the stock extended. But they said that she must have pulled the trigger with her toe. However, that is impossible because the pictures of her at the crime scene shows that she had on gym shoes. So that is impossible. Also, too, with my experience in law enforcement, when we have anything with, a gunshot, things like that, I was I came onto a scene where someone had just inflicted had just did a self-inflicted gunshot wound, and the firearm was still in his hand, and we witnessed it. But us officers, we removed that firearm because he was still kind of his muscles were still twitching and things like that, so we removed it. So we had to get when we got hired, our fingerprints were taken, so that we could show that we handled that weapon. But also, too, although we saw him, in the very seconds after he had shot himself, there was paper bags placed over his hands to do what is called a gunshot residue test. Because the gunpowder, when you fire a firearm, that's why at the range they say, after shooting, don't eat, don't apply cosmetics, don't do that, because there's still residue all on your exposed clothing and skin and stuff like that. Apparently, they did not test our sister for this, and I believe, I could be wrong, and if I am, there was something where when our sister's body arrived in the States, her white gloves were glued to her hands. So that was something else that her father had brought to the attention, like, these things are not right, in addition to the removal of her personals, because it appeared that someone tried to eliminate some evidence from
Evidence, yes.
so yes, I just, Kareem, do you have anything as far as just common sense looking at this to say this does not make
It doesn't make sense. It's Stevie Wonder and Ray Charles can see something happening here. This wasn't a suicide. And for the record, most people who commit suicide, most women, women are still very vain about their body and their appearance. Even if they commit suicide, they're not going to shoot themselves. They're going to use pharmaceuticals.
pills.
Or they might, at the extreme, they might hang themselves, or they might jump off
Drowning.
drowning. They might take some sleeping pills and put it.
Mhm.
So men, we typically are the ones that will, use a weapon to kill ourselves.
I've witnessed that 3 times. 3 times where a gunshot was used. I've seen it myself.
And another thing most women will do, they will slit their wrist.
Cause yeah, to cry out for help, and that's one thing too that the family put out. Even her most recent phone call, which was like the day before her murder, she was, vibrant, happy about life. Even people who came in contact with her can vouch for that. She was upbeat, positive about life. All the things that they tried to, put on her, she had a breakup, things like that. That's normal. I won't say it's normal, but that's what happens with us. And that's why
Yeah.
I want to bring up a term that is used, and it wasn't used as frequently by this term when we were active duty, but it's apparent now, and it's called a black girl attitude. In the back in the day, it was called angry black woman, and then coming out of the military, it was called being Christopher Dorner. Once you start reporting injustices and crimes that happen to you, they want to deem you as mentally unstable
Able.
or going through something, or you were doing that.
Well,
She was none of that. None.
and in many cases, they try to facilitate that. They will facilitate it by ostracizing you, by making you feel like you're not a part of the division or unit, and or they'll spread lies and rumors about you. And in my case, it was like when people said and talked to me, it was like they're you don't sound like the way they say you are. I said, what do you mean? I said, well, they say you're this and that, and I'm like, no, because I said no because I stood up for myself, and so their entire they're trying to ostracize me. That's what then, and since they couldn't get me as far as using the military justice system, they decided to use even more skullduggerous means, which means like going into your records and carefully omitting certain accommodations and awards, and omitting poorly, my ad, certain things out of your records, because these idiots use whiteout to try to omit things from not only my record but other people's records.
I believe that I haven't looked, but since you brought it up, I believe that my surface warfare was omitted from is
Yep.
on my DD-214,
Yep.
but I have my certificate and I also have the command letter.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
I got that, and I actually had when they omitted actually, because when they on your record they have like your TAD orders is not shown on your record, but it's a part of your training jacket. But lucky for me, I still had a copy of my orders. You have to get official orders. When I went to personnel, there was like things are missing. I was like, yeah, do you still have a copy? They say we can get it because they can go through bloopers and get the Bureau of Naval Personnel. They call it bloopers, and go backtrack your last four. That's all they need. They can find if you was sent anywhere. You had special assigned duty. So, and when I got to Japan my last year in, that was a huge problem because it was like holes in my record. There were another interesting thing they did was they went back and changed the PRT scores. So, and the PRT coordinator, I asked him like how they can change the scores. He said before that it's like from the time you're in transit, you're still, even though I'm in transit, they still have access to
Your electronic record.
electronic record, and I'm still on the ship's alpha roster.
Right. And me,
You
I
know,
misspoke. I said that's not on my D-214. I got this certificate that I was awarded my enlisted surface warfare specialist. However, the actual letter designating me to wear it, I had to fight to get that.
yeah, I had the same with me. I had to go fight to
Yep.
get that because they wanted when I got out. that's when I made second when I got out, and they actually offered me a great deal. They was gonna, because I didn't make ABF 2, I made IS 2, and that's intelligence specialist. And they told me if I really wanted to stay in, they'll give me a reset counter on the PFA scores, because in reality I only failed 1, and then all of a sudden I failed 3. And they said, you know, they said we can make it go away, and I was at that point I was like, I'm tired, I'm done.
Right. We're getting close to 2 hours, Kareem. I thank
Yep.
you so much. As I stated, like you're just so magnificent, and
I am not. I'm just a regular dude. I was
your story, I'm so honored that you decided to go ahead and produce your future project for us, and you also really enrich us with your music, your perspective. And when I was still, in the church, killing my hair and trying to, get away from my black self, you stayed the same, and you just, inspire me to.
I used to tell her, because she used to wanted to go to she used to want to go to the club, and I was like, there's nothing in the club. The only people who are in the club is they looking for the same thing.
Right.
I say, you're looking for something. I say, I should tell you, they're looking for something that you already have at home.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And you're young, you didn't care. You was like, I want to go. I want to go to the club.
Now I'm like, I don't want to go to concerts or nothing. I can listen to music here in my house. I don't have to
Yep.
pay for parking. I save a whole bunch of money. But it really was the culture, because it was expected, being a sailor, drink to the foam,
Yep. It's in the fight song.
Exactly. And that was just the biggest trick ever. But I'm so happy that, I really didn't get in too deep, thanks to, level-headed, brilliant minds like yourself. I just wish that, we could duplicate you, a bunch of times, and put you all over the fleet and all over the services
I
in everyone's life.
I used to have like what that conversations with brothers on the mess decks, and they used to just call me crazy, like, because I used to tell them, this is not a life, this is just a job.
Mm-hmm.
This is a job. Don't treat this as something bigger than what it is. This is a job. You get paid and you go home. Unfortunately for a lot of us, we live on this
Right.
on this on this bucket.
Mm-hmm.
Don't treat it as don't treat it as more than what it is, and and don't don't be surprised when certain individuals who smile in your face and tell you
Yep.
you're their best friend, and they stab you. They pull that metaphorical dagger out of their and stab you with it. Don't be surprised when it happens, because at the end of the day, a lot of these people, they don't, all they care about is getting in the next chevron.
Mm-hmm.
They care about getting an early promote on their eval. That's what they care about.
And that nobody exposes the dirt that they did, that they keep sweeping it under the
You
rug.
know what? And with the two individuals, me and they're warrant officers now.
Wow.
They're
Mm-hmm.
warrant officers, and so now they can really sweep all the dirt they did. They whitewashed that bad boy. And it's funny because when I talk to people and from the Truman, and I talked and they asked, they can't believe. I'm like, I said, you gotta remember about this one particular individual that, and this probably be the last story. This individual was down in the pump room and got into an argument with another airman, with another E3. They got so into it that he was like, okay, you know what? I'm I'm not petty officer so and so. I'm my first name. He
Mm-hmm.
actually hid his coveralls, put his crows, tucked them inside. He said, I am so and so. Let's do this. Soon as this individual gets punched, he can't take a punch. He took one punch and got knocked out. He ran up to security. Is one in And this is one individual who we know that he used to tout that he was from the hood. He grew up in the hood. He was your your rigger stereotype. You know who I'm talking about. And when I heard that, and most guys don't like, most guys have, a lot of veterans do, they have selective memories. They don't remember, they don't want to remember everything about their time in.
Right.
So
Yep.
when I bring this up, a lot of people, it's like it slips their mind.
Mm-hmm.
But then I know, but if it was something crazy, like I knew a guy that went on a crime spree on the base in Yokosuka,
Mm-hmm.
they bring that up. Oh yeah, that dude crazy. But those little things, because most of them are still friends with them, they still communicate through social media, and I'm pretty sure it's gotten back to a few of these individuals that when I was making my initial inquiries just to confirm some stories and rumors, it probably got back to them, and I don't care,
Mm-hmm.
because they won't even know I'm writing about them, because everything's getting flipped,
Mm-hmm.
names, personalities, everything.
Right.
It's just the fact that what still pisses me off is that in the totality of the military, you have individuals like this who made their careers off of screwing people over,
Mm-hmm.
off of off of her, sexually assaulting and harassing women, because they're the good old boys.
Right.
And I'm it's like the one of the books you told me to read, I'm telling,
Yeah.
that's the great example of someone who decided, you know what, let me expose everything, and
Mhm.
we need to find that brother.
Yes.
We need to find him, because he apparently, from what I've seen, he's homeless out in New York.
What?
From when I checked with the publisher, and they said they believe he's homeless. They lost in contact with the brother, but um we need to find that brother, because you know the his story is like mine and yours. He joined because that was his last option. That was his only option he can take, he can do. And to see this man go tell his story and go through all of this,
Mm-hmm.
and for him to end up in the position he's in, is beyond absurd to me. And when I'm done with mine, I'm going to I'm going to try to seek this individual out.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you have another book there, and it's one of my personal favorites, Black Sailor, White Navy. This talk about the brothers that was in the Navy during the Vietnam War. And I was on the ship that this book talks about, the Kitty Hawk. In 1972, the brothers on the Kitty Hawk had a race riot, and 15 brothers, it was 15 of them, with just wrenches, ball peen hammers, locked down the entire ship.
Mm-hmm.
And they talked about how that book talks about how a lot of the brothers, when used to get drafted, they used to put them in deck department, they put them in air department,
Yep.
they treated them like crap. And these were things that was also held over from World War II. They talking about when Doris Miller, they were naming aircraft carrier after. And yeah, and I'm like, don't
Cookie.
y'all he was a cook.
Mm-hmm. Cookie.
That And they told him he couldn't, because he was a black man, he had inferior intelligence, therefore he couldn't shoot the big guns, and he proved otherwise.
Mm-hmm. Me and my mom, we went to the Naval Undersea Warfare Museum up in Keyport, Washington. And my mom never served a day in the military. We go up there. How do you have an undersea warfare museum and don't mention Master Chief Carl Brashear? You know,
Yes.
black man, Navy diver, amputee. It was like it's crazy the whitewashing and the I'm bewildered because I notice this happens every kind of I don't know every new career I take. there's a whitewashing of the indoctrination. And
Yeah.
I'm really happy that a lot of the statues are coming down, because we were first indoctrinated with this in school.
Yeah. We was told,
Why do we
oh,
celebrate? Why did we and our children observe Columbus Day? You know, why do we get fed all these lies, but then we find out it's not for our black selves?
yeah,
You know, it's not. And so the whole time, I posted this picture today because a year ago I was in South Carolina, and I visited the memorial for the Tuskegee Airmen. We worked in aviation. I did not hear about the Tuskegee Airmen until the Red Tails movie came out with Nate Parker and
yeah,
Jr. I didn't know anything about it.
yeah. There was
There's a major whitewashing when it comes
yeah,
to us and in our advancements and our achievements and our stories when it comes to building up this country. Like you said, we, all of us who are on this live, those of us who are in the comments, our sister LaVena Johnson, her father, we were all in the military. We are patriotic. We served. Our ancestors built up this country on their backs, their bloods, their blood, their sweat, and their tears. We are the biggest supporters of the red, white, and blue. But yet, this is the stuff that happens to us where, you know, our families do not get justice. We do not get justice. You know, Walter Scott, he was a veteran, you know, and
yeah,
this is, if you don't understand what's going on in this country, this is why. Okay, this is,
yeah. It's
no one wears the American flag in the boldest colors big enough than our ancestors than we do on our backs.
yes. It's when you think about it, the the Red Tails, the Tuskegee Airmen, they was the most proficient fighter pilots in World War II. They had the fewest casualties. The tank battalions of in World War II who liberated Italy were some of the bravest men in the war. Um, the first person to die in the Revolutionary War, which in a few days we're celebrating America, was a black man, Christopher Tux. You know, he died. And here's something a lot of people don't mention about during that time: the British was actually offering freedom to black slaves that decided to fight for the crown, because at that time they were starting to abolish slavery, because now you have the industrial revolution. It was easier to exploit the poor people in British society than the green slaves, you know. But um some of the bravest soldiers in during the Civil War was the black soldiers. We was the black serviceman has always been the most proficient and bravest soldiers in our military, bar none. But because of the fact that because of racism and systematic white supremacy, you never get to hear their stories. You don't get to hear, you know, you never learned about Doris Miller in school. You know, this is a guy. He's a big black dude from Alabama. Shot down a bunch of Japanese fighter planes.
Mhm.
Um, the recent movie, The Five Bloods.
Yeah.
The character the Chadwick Boseman character. They say he was the coldest and bravest soldier that they ever known. You know, because black soldiers have this idea that, you know, if it's a bunch of us, we're going to look out for each other. We're going to protect each other. You know, we looked out for each other. We want to make sure if I don't go back, you go back to the world with 10 fingers, 10 toes.
Mhm.
Um, and it's unfortunate, unfortunate now that people are now starting to hear these stories
Mhm.
and learn about, learn. My dad was a Vietnam veteran, and if he was alive today, I would sit down and talk to him and hear his stories. My
Right.
dad personally wouldn't let me join the Navy.
Mhm.
My dad would have been like Laverne Johnson's dad and said, why do you want to join?
Right.
He wouldn't even conceive the thought. He was like, okay, I'm gonna find a way to get you. We won't find a way for you to go to college.
Right.
we're not joining the military.
Mhm.
And that's how I'm going to be when I have kids. Is that no, like my experience, and my kids is going to be able to read my experiences. Like, you know, I'm not going to put you through what I went through.
Mhm.
There are better ways of doing these. My nephews, I tell them all the time, like, you don't need to join the military. And they have friends that's joining, and I tell them like it's not it's not worth it. It's not worth the struggle and the pain, and also dealing with you know the separating your personal life from the military, because that's one thing a lot of people don't know how to do, is to separate being on duty and then getting home, and then you bring, unfortunately for a lot of us, we bring home life on the ship and life in the field to our homes and to our loved ones. I used to have my girl used to, at one point, used to, one of the first things she used to do when she used to see me, she used to take me into the temples in Tokyo and meditate, because she said she used to tell me, you're not allowed to bring that energy into our house.
Right.
So and it I'm appreciative of that, because I used to hear, you know firsthand about the service members' domestic violence, alcoholism.
Mhm.
So it's it, and a lot of that is, unfortunately, it's the culture. And we bring that culture home. And it's disheartening, because when they get out, we have a lot of these emotional problems,
Mhm. That's
and
absolutely right. And that's one thing, with Bomani, I'm like, look, you're not. I'm sorry, you're not, because as we all stated, there's things that we have suppressed, and there's things that we've experienced that it changes a person. I'm not that same girl that left Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm a totally different person. I could say there was good that came out of it, but the bad, I don't wish that. I wish it on my worst enemies.
enemies. Yeah,
I do. They deserve it. They're my worst enemies. I wish it on them. But good people. Those of us who did join with honorable intentions, and it's just not right. So I have a question for you too. Um, Now that Fort Hood, not just Fort Hood, but the military in general, and these things have been brought to a surface during this time where we are demanding change. We are getting our change. We're not waiting for it. We're not praying for it. We're not waiting for laws to be changed. What advice would you have for families, for our sister LaVena Johnson's family 15 years later, but also those who did not make the headlines, those that we do not know about? What do you have for their families? What can us who are watching, us who are veterans, does this, spark a new, you know, agenda for us? Like what can we do right now? What do you advise?
the families continue continue raising hell. Continue. We need, as for us, we need to get her name out there. We need, just like Breonna Taylor, we need to get her name out there, because this is a grave injustice, and this is a from hey, let's be clear. The military thinks of itself as a corporation. So, from a corporation that prides itself on honor and duty and loyalty and everything that they tout, but yet, just like her and many other men and women, they don't receive justice. I say, let's continue to raise hell, and let's expose the truth, the culture, the entire culture of the military. I encourage any veterans out there, you can vlog, you can do vlogs, you can set up a blog, you can do post, get your stories out there. Tell your stories. Tell your experiences. Tell your personal problems of what the struggle of being black in the military is like. Tell those stories, because those stories are going to be the lessons and the catalyst for effective change. Because one of the things when we start putting our demands, one of the things I would say that black people should be exempt from joining the military henceforth, because those are not our wars. The Vietnam War was not our war. The first Gulf War was not our war. The Iraqi War and the second Iraq War was not our war. What they did in Libya is not our war. What they're doing now is not our concern as black people. Our concern right now is the internal struggle within this country, and we need to focus on that. Because if they don't fix this, you're going to have more Christopher Dorners. You're going to have more Micah Thompsons, because these are men who believed in that first opening sentence in the Oath of Abolition, where they stated that you're defending the Constitution, the people in the Constitution, and the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That is a serious statement to make. And then it proceeds to follow orders from the president, vice president, blah, blah, blah. But that first opening sentence is powerful and it's meaningful. And if we continue to see the injustices done, it's going to get worse. We're starting to see it, where you're having brothers and sisters coming to these protests ready, because you have these militia groups and these burnouts from the military showing up, and it's going to come in the head. And a lot of people think voting Joe Biden in is going to change. No, Joe Biden is just the different side of the same coin. He's no different than Trump. The only difference is between him and Trump is that Trump will call you an N-word to your face, where Joe Biden will smile in your face and shake your hand, and behind closed door call you. And so we have to get over this idea that the Democrats and the Democrats is going to help it. We need to be our own autonomous party, and we need our own think tanks and our own lobbying firms. And we're the Pacific Code for black people. Nothing more, nothing less. We can't get distracted. The problem is now a lot of us are getting distracted and sidebarred with these other things, outside things. And we can't do that. If one group of people stands in solidarity, that's good, but they can't turn the message about themselves, and I see that. We saw the Essence cover with Billy Porter. That's absurd to me. We're in the middle of a war, a physical and existential war for black people, and here you are in a dress. We've seen videos of women who are more concerned about their sexuality, and they're out there twerking and showing they're not really for liberation. They're about sexual access in the middle of a war zone. When I look at the protests, that's a war zone. We have to start, and I tell people, we have to start looking at it like that. When you out there protesting and you see the cops and they're in formation, you're in a war zone. You got to be serious. This is serious as you can get. This is about liberation. Nothing more, nothing less. This is about implementing justice.
I didn't get that. Could you?
And if we don't keep our eyes on the prize and stay on the ball, and not allow other outside individuals, those who just doing it for personal gain, to derail us, we can bring down, if we stay on code, we can bring down the entire government of the United States of America just by them not heeding to our demands.
Thank you so much for that. And like I said, if you look behind Kareem, he has some gems, some books behind him.
You can't really see because I have poor lighting. Next time I do one of these, I'll make sure I have some effective lighting so you can see my face and
We
see.
have another video that we planned, like, our top 10 most recommended books, our favorite books, because, I don't want to say a bad word, but sapiosexual. I'm intrigued with knowledge and things like that. So I think that right now, we need to enlighten ourselves, but also, fuel, take that time, be quiet, detach from mainstream media, subscribe to the new black media.
Media.
Shout out to TVA, PBT, Tariq Nasheed, the
Y'all need to be listening to these brothers. I was a fan of Truth Nasheed from his first book, The Art of Macking.
I think I got that book. Hold on. Yeah.
Like she went to go get the book. I was a fan of his work from then, and this is a guy that grew from a guy, someone just to get men men, uh, get men to grow to have confidence to be able to talk to a woman. From there to where he is now. TBA and Professor Black Truth, man. I discovered Jason Black, man. I was like, this dude is on point. And this was during the time when another individual who turned out to be a coon, Tommy Sotomayor, he was at one point he was teetered a little bit, but I discovered Jason Black through him, and then from there TB, and then from there the other channels, Harvey's channel. He's an Army veteran, and that's a brother I would love to sit down and talk to. Nicole's Views is another great channel. She's leading the fight to get Bill Cosby acquitted, and the fight for Michael Jackson. I commend her for that, because these are Michael Jackson can't defend himself, and Bill Cosby, we all know the situation he was in. There's Art Caffey. I love Art Caffey because she's trying to get sisters to embrace who they are, embrace their blackness, embrace, the black femininity, and try to get sisters to understand, to deprogram sisters of many of the Eurocentric concepts that has been placed on us. And and there's numerous of channels that I listen to. Neely Fuller, I listen to his program all the time because he's been doing this since the 70s. Him and Frances Cress Welsing, I think the one of the most important books any black person should read is her book, along with autobiography of Malcolm X, anything that's written by Sherazad Ali. This can go on and on, and even books written by white people talking about white people, like The Invention of the White Race, or White Trash, or that's White Fragility. These are white people talking about white people, because a lot of white people don't even know their history. They don't even know who they really are and where they come from. So it's important for us to not only know our history, but know the history of our enemies. And that comes from, reading books. If you got to read books like The Art of War, or anything by Robert Greene, or the book of the Five Rings, Miyamoto Musashi. Reading books about African spirituality, reading book. I can go on and on and on and on and on and on, but we have to educate ourselves, because the school system's not going to do it. And we have to prepare the next generation. If this fight is going to continue, we have to prepare the next generation. So, we have to, study. We have to have study time. We have to have time for preparation. So I personally don't think we're making strides, and we need to continue the pressure, but it's not going to be done. This fight is not going to be done overnight. This has been a 400-year battle, 400-plus-year battle, and it's not going to end in the summer of 2020. It's going to end when our demands are met. It can end tomorrow, or it can end the next couple of years. It's just a matter of we have to continue the pressure and continue to stay on code and stay on point.
Yes, absolutely. You just dropped everybody's name. Like if yourself does not have them, we can't talk no more. So I'm going to give you a couple of books that we just talked about as well. You gave fantastic advice for the family of our fallen sister, Private LaVena Johnson, and also the families of the victims in Fort Hood at this moment, and also in the past. But not only at Fort Hood, but in the military, as a whole, and you gave us veterans and those of us who are still serving something to strive for. We need to get on code. We need to, as we saw others do, is close ranks. We need to protect ourselves, protect our own, and not only are we fighting, this enemy that is attacking the U.S., but this enemy that's here that is sullying, what we stand for, and is a homegrown domestic terrorist. So I'm going to give you a couple of books real quick. I found this one. This one was recent. It's about National Geographic called Secret Societies. And we mentioned tattoos. We also mentioned different, paraphernalia, propaganda. Get a National Geographic, okay? This came out. What was the date on this one? This it says display until May 1st, 2020. So while all of us was inside on COVID, you know what your girl was doing? I was looking at the magazine racks, while I was trying to get those essentials. But Secret Societies, I picked this up. A ton of information in here. Kareem, we could chop it up on this later.
Yep.
This is deep. This is hella deep because
there are secret societies. There are hidden entities and organizations out there. It's like it starts with groups like the Masons and Eastern Stars and these fraternities, these black fraternities, the Boule, and they're there. And the interesting thing, they hide in plain sight. Everybody is a known secret.
Mm-hmm.
Masons, where there are people don't know that George Washington he was inaugurated wearing a Mason's sash, like what he wore. That's what he wore when he was inaugurated. You be surprised, like when they talk about the Freemasons. A bulk of the presidents were Masons.
Right. Jackson. Yep. All up in there.
And the Masons, that's and people talk about this, the Illuminati. There was an actual Illuminati. There was a
Lafayette.
Lafayette. Yep.
Yep.
So we need to be hip of all these secret organizations and these societies, because these are, like, we talk about Jeffrey Epstein. Who was protecting Jeffrey Epstein for years? This guy who has receipts on presidents and actors and businessmen, and he mysteriously died in a federal jail cell, in a federal prison. Mm-hmm. You have to start applying skepticism. Another book I'm gonna mention people should read is Carl Sagan's The Demon Haunted World. Using the candle as a light in the dark, using science as a candle in the dark. Carl Sagan was an astrophysicist. He was actually, if you know who Neil deGrasse Tyson is, he was Neil deGrasse Tyson's mentor.
Wow. Okay.
This is a brilliant man. This is a guy that his whole life is spent in looking into the universe and discovering the mysteries in the universe. And he wrote a great book about critical thinking and skepticism, knowing when to ask questions, how to ask questions, mm-hmm. when to dismiss a bad claim or a bad idea. Mm-hmm. He even talks about in the book The Fall of America, how America will fall because because of people who will believe in an idea and have used religion and patriotism as a cause to go into to the fall of America. Another book is Hannah Arendt. She was a German philosopher, and she wrote a book about totalitarianism, and she talks about Hitler, Stalin, how the rise of totalitarianism. Just Google Hannah Arendt, and she was a German Jew who wrote the treatise on totalitarianism. We have to start reading. We have to start acquiring knowledge and reading and investing in knowledge. It's cool to get out here if you got the ability to do so, to go buy a big house and buy a nice car. That's cool. I'll knock anybody to do that. But if you're going to have that big house, have that library, have access to knowledge. When I was a kid, I think we should end it here. When I was a kid, the one thing I used to love about those old shows like Leave It to Beaver and Father Knows Best, they had a study. They walked into a room, they had a desk, and they had a library. They had encyclopedias and books, and they can just go if they need to look up something, they can access it. Their kids can go into the study and need to do something for their school project. They can go look it up. Granted, these days we have Google, but you only get a small piece from Google or even YouTube, where we can go back and listen to John Heinrich Clark or Dr. Amos or Dr. Ben. Listen to Dr. Welsing. We can listen to all these great people in their speeches, and we have the YouTube where we hear their lineage continues with Tariq Nasheed and Jason Black. We got that, but at the same time, it's nothing like having their words, their physical words, in front of you, and you can read it and internalize it. And we need to invest in it. This is when I buy books, this is an investment that started when I was a kid, when my mother and father used to buy those scholastic books from the school, and you used to read. That's where this grew out of, from that. I told a friend of mine, one of my school teachers read us Lord of the Rings the entire 5th grade semester, from talking about The Hobbit and then the whole trilogy, the entire school semester. And that even gets you more involved with, reading. It's important. It's the most important thing, because that was the thing they did. This when we got left the plantations, many of us decided to go pick up books and read and educate ourselves. And if we learn who we are as a people and where we came from, and how great we are, how brilliant we are, it will be
mind-blowing. It is mind-blowing. Like, it has really, like, me, I came into consciousness late, but Bomani, we brought him up, teaching him, and you are, evidence of what teaching your own, instilling your own, being your child's first is all about.
And when I talk to him, I tell him, you're 16. I get it, man. You're 16. When I was 16, all I did was want to play trumpet, look at girls, and play Street Fighter. And I can admit that with a smile on my face, because I was a young man. That's what a young man, his whole world is. And I told him, when you get 18, that's when things start to change. I said, but at the same time, I had my mother. Your parents is going to do that because they care about you. They want to see your full potential. I said, but I told him, I understand. You're 16. 16 is that's a weird age. You want to, he wants to play video games all day and talk to his friends, And look at booty shaking girls on the internet. Probably that's he's a young man.
Baby, not my baby. Not my baby.
Yeah.
Not my baby. Real quick, I would go through some books I have on my lap here, real quick, and we're gonna
Yep.
close it out. Thank you so much for hanging out with us for 2 hours and 30
Oh
minutes.
man.
This is just monumental. Like I can just imagine our grandchildren, just sitting around listening, like, wow, that's what grandma looked like when she was younger. Wow, that's what granddaddy looked like he was young, and he was on that conscious stuff. So here we go. I have this book here that we mentioned this tonight, the United Independent Compensatory Code System concept by our elder Neely
Hey,
Fuller
Fuller Jr.
Jr. was also a veteran. He served in the Army and also the Air Force. If you don't have these books, I believe that these two books should be read by every victim of racism, white supremacy prior to going out into the world as early in life as possible.
Yep.
Two books need to be read. The next book I found this at the thrift store. I highly recommend, yes, when you hear a book title, you go to Amazon or you go to your local black bookstore to buy it. But I suggest you go to thrift stores.
Stores.
I found this at the thrift store. It's called The Black Worker. It is by Sterling D. Spiro and Abram L. Harris. In this book, they talk about black workers who are who are the United Mine Workers, those who worked in the garment and textile unions, the railroads,
Roads.
the Pullman porters, the steel workers, the coal mines, the longshoremen. This book, like I said, if my house is on fire, I'm grabbing this book, my son's baby books, and my guns, and I'm getting up out of here. The next one right here, also at a thrift store. This is called Uncle Sam's Plantation.
Oh, I might.
Big Government Enslaves America's Poor and What We Can Do About It. So, yes,
Yep.
this is a great one from the thrift store. And this is by Star Parker, okay?
I might have to look that one up.
Yes, I will post it in the description. I'll update the description. The next one we talked about, I found it at the thrift store. I put on social media. Kareem bought it, and it's called I'm Tellin, Too Black to Serve by Thomas McDonald. You said that you looked into it, that our brother may be homeless. We got to find him and take care of our brother. Like I said, I got at the thrift store. I paid, I don't know, but I got at the thrift store. But
I think I paid like $13 for it on Amazon.
Absolutely. I may have a giveaway soon where I go ahead and purchase it so that, our brother gets something. Okay. But that is a read for black people who have served or thinking about joining the army. Make sure you read this book. The next one, Kareem, I'll let you break this one down. This is called Black Sailor, White Navy. Go ahead.
This is the story. This is actually the guy who wrote it is a naval historian. And he wrote several books about naval history, military history. And this is a book that covers from 1960 to 1975. It's about Navy during that time and the segregation and the racism these brothers faced while serving in the Navy. It all came to head in 1972 during the race riots on the Kitty Hawk, and not to mention other incidents. He talks about other incidents prior to that, like I forgot the ammo post mutiny.
The Port of Chicago.
Part of the Port of Chicago mutiny. He talks about all of that. He talks about the culture itself and during the time in the military. He talks about how and why many black sailors were put into certain jobs because they didn't have, quote unquote, they couldn't pass the aptitude test, or they deemed them inferior, so they couldn't get into higher qualification, higher jobs require higher qualifications. And it's a great book if you want to understand the Navy and what a lot of these things continue is to this day. It's a great book to pick up.
Mm-hmm. The next one I also did I get it? I think I got this on Amazon. I think somebody had recommended it, but it is I actually got this in Cincinnati at a thrift store in Cincinnati for 99 cents.
Okay.
It's called Red, White, and Black. The peoples of early North America. So we all know how Harriet Tubman, the contrabands of war back in Virginia, things like that. So we have been serving. We have given blood, sweat, tears, life okay,
Yeah.
and or the future. Our ancestors, they can see us now. You know, their descendants are invested in this country, so no one can ever call us a terrorist or anti-American. We are American, and we have built this up. We have funded it. We have given life, limb, everything for us. So no one can ever call us that. So I
Yep.
say thank you to Queen Mother Betty. She had to, in her portion. But tonight you've had some great people as we, keep mentioning the name of our fallen sister LaVena Johnson, and also our brothers and sisters who go unnamed, whose stories go unheard when it comes to, you know, mysterious death, foul play, murder within the military. Okay, we joined to do something honorable. Our family should still be celebrating, our fallen brothers and sisters. Okay, so I would want to say thank you to Kareem. Do you have any final, comments, thoughts, anything like that? And also, where can everybody find you and keep in touch?
I think I said everything I need to say. So, you can find me on Facebook. Just type in my name, Kareem Gideon. You can type it might come up my music page as well. If my full name might show up. Um, I I really don't like right now. I do have uh, YouTube page, but it's more so for an archive of musical performances. You want to go check that out? That'll be great. Um, if you want to hear some great music, you can check out In Tradition Jazz Ensemble. We're a Afrocentric, African conscious band. The leader of our band was a former new Black Panther. We have an African scholar in our band. Couple, I could guess you can say you can consider me a scholar as well. Um, our band has investigated and studied the music of the continent and connected it to the music of Americas of Black American music. Um, and we investigate that and we um turn into the music you hear. Our current album is called Ancestral Alliances. I highly recommend you pick it up because two of the tracks on there, um, we have a great poet by the name of Aurora Harris. She's a wonderful sister. Um, she she she, she wrote two poems. Stephen and War is here. Stephen is about if is is in reference to the character Stephen from Django Unchained, but we know who Stephen is, and War is here was written about war is here and war here for Black people and liberation in America. We honor our ancestors. We have tunes. We written tunes about Asada Shakur and Gabriel Prosser and Nat Turner. You know, that's the type of music that um, we're putting out and producing. Myself, I'm when everything we get to all clear, I plan to go into the studio myself and finish a recording, get a recordings for myself. But for the most part, there's my YouTube channel has an archive of performances and things like that. You can find me on Instagram. Most my Instagram is also I also post like books, photos of books, and so you can get an idea of what I'm reading and what I'm a lot of the books that's on this wall back here, and there's books over here as well. Um, I'm a person that's constantly reading and constantly studying. Like my Facebook page, I'm usually giving my insights about what I observe and seen. So, feel free if you want to hit me up, feel free to hit me up. I'm send me a friend request. We sit back and get engaged and talk to me. And I always look forward to talking to the more like-minded people and because there's things the one rule that I would impart to anybody that is that we don't know everything, and while it may appear that me and my sister here have acquired knowledge, this is a fraction of the world's knowledge and the knowledge of our people. But however, I love gaining perspectives from other like-minded individuals. So just if you want to hit me up, you want to talk about world affairs and Black liberation and music, and we can even talk about who's the greatest rapper of all time, or who's the greatest jazz musician or R&B singer. And for me, when I look at Black music, I call it Black music because that's what it is. It's everything, all Black music connected. Jazz, blues, R&B, rap. We created it. It's ours. Gospel, everything. So I told someone it's not about style, it's about tradition. This is from the Black tradition. So that's why the band is called In Tradition, because we coming from the Black tradition. So I recommend you go check out some of the band stuff. The band is actually, when everything is all clear, we're getting ready to record some great music, and I'm writing a few things, and he's getting ready to write this suite, this epic suite, and it's going to invoke a lot of emotions, because it's about a story that's recently been told. It's going to be a suite based on the Devil's Punch Bowl, and if you go Google that, and that's pretty much it, and other than that, Black first.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Everybody in the comments, everybody who's watching, thank you so much for, just listening to our story. And also, I hope this charges you so that we can continue supporting the family of our fallen sister, Private LaVena Johnson of the United States Army, who died mysteriously while serving in Iraq. Salute to her family. And, let's continue putting their names out there. Let's not let them become forgotten. Okay. Also, those who, did not make the headlines, also continue to share your story, because this is important. And what we, you know, make what we put out becomes tangible for our future generations, and this becomes part of our story as foundational Black Americans.
Yes.
Okay, make sure you like, subscribe, share, join us on our other social media platforms. I have majority of the book links in the description. I will add more as we come along. Let me know if you want to see more of us, if you have topics, you
Yeah.
want to
Like I said, you can talk to me. Like, I love to come back. You can talk to me about anything. We can talk about, how I fell in love with jazz music, or I'm learning more and more to be more of an open book. Share my life. And I think our band leader Olajimi Tafatono says she's putting me on the path to be a master teacher. I'm like, I'll never be a master teacher, but he and it's important for me to acquire this knowledge and share it, because if I don't, and this makes me selfish, and 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 it makes me a person that would use this knowledge for my own selfish means, and knowledge shouldn't be used for selfish means. It should be shared and experienced, and that's what I got from when I first read the autobiography of Malcolm X when I was 17.
Yes.
So thank you all for listening to us ramble and talk and pontificate for how long is this, 2-3 hours, something like that?
2:48. I want to say thank you everybody for the super chats and also for sharing and everything. So we're not going to hold you too much longer. It's 11 o'clock.
Doc, I have to get ready to pick up Queen Mother Gideon.
There you go. Well, good night, everybody. Kareem, thank you so much. And you have been monumental in my development over the last 17 plus years. So thank you so much.
And also, next time we do this, I'm going to make sure I have better lighting so people can see, because I'm looking at this like, damn,
You'll be all right. February. You waited a
But
struggle, so you are
yeah, yeah. So, but other than that, I really enjoyed this, and can't wait to do this again.
absolutely
And peace to all, peace and blessings, and to
blessed.
everybody who stayed up and listened. And you guys have a good night, and see you out there.
Good night, everybody. Stay
Good night.
safe. Love you.
Love you.